gallery behind you.
Welcome, everybody. Can we get started with a introduction from Andrea?
Okay.
Hi, everybody. How are you? I'm here with the Community Language Cooperative to help us create a space of language justice so we can speak and hear in the language of our heart. We are going to provide simultaneous interpretation in English and Spanish. Once we turn on the interpretation, please select the globe at the bottom of your screen and choose your language. If you are fully bilingual, you do not need to select a language. If not, please choose the language of your heart. Hola a todos, mi nombre es Andrea, estoy aquí con la Community Language Cooperative para ayudarnos a crear un espacio de justicia del lenguaje donde podamos hablar y escuchar en el idioma de nuestro corazón. Vamos a tener interpretación simultánea en inglés y en español y en algunos segundos cuando aprendamos la interpretación vas a ver un mapa mundo en la parte inferior de tu pantalla donde vas a poder seleccionar tu idioma. Si eres bilingüe no tienes que escoger ningún idioma, pero si no, por favor selecciona el idioma de tu corazón. Thank you and we can begin interpretation now.
Thank you. So I will call our meeting, our work session for September 27th, 2021 to order at 6:04 p.m. And we have all council board members. Well, I guess we're council members still till we start the board meeting, but all council members present. I just want to remind everyone to speak slowly, and if you're going to refer to something in our packet, to let Andrea know what page you're on. So we're going to start off with our housing authority. So I will call to order a meeting of the Sheridan Housing Authority for September 27th at 6:04 p.m. with all board members present.
How about if you guys,
Shall we?
maybe Mayor,
Lindsay here?
execute that, we can get Lindsay.
Great.
That way, because in that way, the camera and everything.
Okay.
will see
Just wondering
yeah.
if it's like-
And she can interpret.
Don't be freaked out by this machine that turns to stare at you.
Oh, I was wondering what that was.
All right, so the first item tonight is the minutes, presentation and approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion. I'll second you. Approve. I'm talking slow. So I can approve the minutes.
I will second.
Motion made by board member Hall, second by board member Daigle. Anyone have any questions or comments or anything about the minutes?
I feel they were very accurate. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Very well done. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved unanimously. And next we have the financial report, presentation and approval. You all saw it in your packet. Want a motion first and we can talk about any questions or
I'll make a motion to approve the financials.
I'll second. Motion made by board member Hall and seconded by board member Stang. I guess first, is there anything you want to add to the financial reports
You know,
or
there's
clarify?
about two things I want to go over, and one of them is in reference to resolution number 6, the Help for Homes program that you all have money that goes towards that helps homeowners in Sheridan.
1 second.
Okay.
Nope. It's a brand new computer. I'm very sorry.
Technology still gets the best of us, even after all this time, right?
I don't, I can't mute anything.
Haven't we told you not to go to this website anymore?
Okay, did that work? No? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm turning it off.
As a kid.
I don't know why it's doing that.
Wait till
I've got like, I have myself, I had it muted
yeah.
and I was trying to turn the volume all the way down on this. I don't know.
It's kind of fun.
Sorry. Sorry, everyone.
Please go ahead.
So the funds for the Help for Homes program lives in our general fund, which the page numbers are not, or the pages are not numbered this time, I apologize. But if you look on the balance sheet for the Sheridan General Fund, the money is actually in the Colorado Trust account. based on the records that I have, and I will apologize, I did not have a good frame of reference for this program and for the money. This was not something I learned about before I took over. So I did some digging into some historical information, just trying to figure out how much money was initially earmarked for this program. And I reached out to Arlene, and Teresa over there is going to help me. She goes, no, we kind of roped her in. But I do think that in 2014, around $319,000 was earmarked for this program. I don't know if that's correct,
It sounds about right.
but it sounds about right. So what everyone is saying.
Yeah, it
It
sounds
was
about
around
that
300,000, yeah. So-
ish, yeah.
Right, and I think that might have come from some initial earmarked money that came over with the housing authority
It
in
was-
2001 when we took it over.
Yeah,
Plus some interest.
it was basically undesignated fund balance, if I remember correctly at the time.
Right, and
Yeah.
I saw an audit entry for, I believe it was a 2001 audit where 309,000 was given to the housing authority in unrestricted funds, and thinking about that plus interest over the next 13, 14 years makes sense that
Mhm.
around 2014, it was around 319, and then we earmarked it for this program.
Yeah.
So that is correct, which I'm like 80% sure, still want to do some digging because I
Sure.
want to have a better understanding of this. That would leave the balance to at about $80,000.
It sounds about right, too.
Okay,
Really?
Yeah,
because
we knew it wasn't gonna last forever, yeah.
no, and at this point, we've
Wow.
done $240,000 worth of withdrawals.
Mhm.
And tonight you're asking for another 50. So after that 50 would be 30,000.
So that sounds about right. And the reason that, and just to kind of inform council, we used to use CDBG money for funding the brothers program, project of the home improvement program. The issue with CDBG, Community Development Block Grant money, when you use that money, it has strings that come with it. And you, as part of the Brothers Program, you have eligibility requirements, income requirements that are tied to that. And if you're using CDBG money, that sets kind of in stone where your where your limits are on income for people that can qualify for the program. Now, when we started using the housing authority money, we were able to step outside of those requirements, and we were able to expand the program to include more people. Because there for a while, it was only very low income that could qualify for it. And we had a lot of folks that would maybe still be considered low income and had needs at their homes, but they made too much money under the CDBG guidelines. So we said, well, if we tap this other revenue source, we won't be beholden to those federal requirements. We can set the requirements how we want them to be. And that's how that kind of evolved. And it started off, I don't remember exactly, but it got to the point where it's like 50,000 a year. And we figured that we'd be able to do that for a little while, knowing all along too, that it was, at some point, it was going to exhaust itself. So to that aspect, actually, I had a discussion with Andrew about this last week. I'm gonna start looking at home funds. So the home funds that come through the county, if you remember, we executed an IGA with the county so that we can tap into their home funds and their, what's the other thing we tap into with them? Is part of that same program, huh?
Mortgages,
The what?
the home mortgage.
Yeah, there's the
program.
home program, and it's the, it's another, I just, I'm brain dead right now today, I'm apologize. But anyway, we're gonna look into that and see if that might be something of a replacement revenue. I don't know what the strings are gonna be with that, though. And we could always go back to CDBG in funding the Brothers Program using CDBG, but we would be then back to it would narrow the focus of the program. So we can keep it going. We just need to, in the next year, to figure out what that's gonna look like to keep it going.
So could you do both? I mean, could you still use CDBG for people who qualified and then just supplement it?
Maybe,
The other
yeah,
way?
possibly. I think if you have the CDBG money in there, like you have to use the requirements, even if you supplement
Right,
it.
that's been it.
Yeah, I think.
So I don't know, maybe we wouldn't get takers like you said
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, I'm fairly confident between, there's several sources that and we just need to be looking at them. And we're looking at setting up some discussions on home funds and things like that with the county over the next few days or weeks here. So we're looking at how do we replace this revenue source for this program. You know, knowing that we're coming to the end, and thank you for looking into that, Lindsay, because I knew we were getting close. Yeah.
And again, I will double check kind of all the records. We
Okay.
want to make sure we're accounting for this properly, but I think
Yeah.
we're close to hitting it all.
And I know we started doing resolutions to do that because I think it was during one of the housing authority audits, the auditors are like on, so you have something from the city, it said, and we're like,
Right,
we were like, we just kind of like cut a check, or we just did, and they're like, no. And then we started doing
Yeah.
resolutions and things
Mhm.
like that, and it was like, and that made them happy, yeah.
which has been really nice.
Yeah,
because the
that's good.
resolutions
We
help
should have been
out
doing that
money,
all along,
right?
you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do remember that.
Well, glad you guys have good memories of that, because that was all new to me.
Well, I
That's-
can bring it further back. I think Dallas told us it was from a house that the housing authority owned and we
Yes,
got sold.
Mhm.
right?
it got sold. Yeah,
That makes
down
sense
by-
too, because there's something about that in the audit. I'm like, what is this house?
It was down by McDonald's.
Yeah,
Or
Jefferson, yep.
Yeah,
Right across the street.
Jefferson.
Oh, how interesting. Okay.
Hmm.
Kind of the last thing I wanted to touch on with financials, you know, everything else is pretty stable. HAP money comes in, HAP money goes out. We do have some money from the CARES Act that we have to spend by the end of this calendar year. And we have spent almost all of it. We've spent some of it to just support kind of virtual working while our folks were out, getting the housing technicians some computers and getting a VPN and stuff set up. We've also used it to supplement low admin fees to run the program. But basically, we've got about $2,200 left, and we will have that spent in the next month or so. So it was great money. It was very helpful, but it's gone almost now. So other than that, does anybody else have any questions?
Don't see anybody. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. And next we have the program reports, presentation approval of the program reports.
I'll make a motion to approve the program reports.
Motion made by board member Camacho and seconded by board member Gallegos.
So probably the biggest thing to point out in the program reports is the increase in the vouchers that we have went from July to August. And you will see more of an increase here in September. We're still continuing to lease up folks. We had 158 vouchers leased up in July. That went to 162 in August. And I think for September, we're probably going to be close to 165, 166. And that was our goal. We were trying to use all of the money that HUD gives us to lease up as many folks as possible. I think last time I talked about, we exhausted a very old 2011 wait list and then opened up the lottery to have more names when we are ready. But at this point, we are just leasing up, and our year-to-date spending is about 95%. It's going to be close to 96 when the year is over. And all the spending we're doing in 2021 is going to have us very stable for 2022. So once we finish the last few folks who are searching and get those folks leased up, we won't be doing really any leasing in 2022. So you'll see a very stable number of vouchers. Well, we have natural attrition. We lose about 4 to 5 vouchers a year in the Sheridan program. It all kind of ebbs and flows. We'll watch that though. And if we start losing more folks, and maybe we'll pull a few from the lottery, but 2022 is going to be very stable after a very big year of leasing in 2021.
At this point, have you heard anything about additional vouchers from the federal government?
So we haven't. So that is part of Biden's kind of housing plan, is to add to what's called universal vouchers. These are universal vouchers just because they're not earmarked for any special population. We're always open to more. Sometimes more doesn't always necessarily mean better. You have to be able to lease those vouchers up. And we are at a point where the affordable part of our housing market is really saturated. So it's not something that's going to happen in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 months. It's something we could see in 2022, and we would definitely be interested in it for both this program and our Inglewood program. It'd be great to have more vouchers. They just have to actually be utilized. And so sometimes that's an if, not an if we can. It's-
Yeah. Well, and everything you hear and read about right now is that there's a devastating housing shortage in Colorado right now.
Right. And if they don't give us enough money to actually
Yeah.
use those vouchers, then it's not gonna happen.
Yep.
So we're waiting to see budget authority for next year and how some of these new kind of Biden-Harris initiatives shake out. So we'll see.
Yep.
We're always open.
Any other questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved unanimously. And we have the manager's report presentation and approval.
I'll make a motion to approve the manager's report.
I'll second.
Motion made by Board Member Camacho and seconded by Board Member Smith.
So not many things to report on necessarily new from last time. Probably the biggest highlight is that our housing coordinator that we hired to help support the Sheridan School Housing Grant and support the voucher program in terms of recruiting new landlords, retaining landlords, and matching up tenants with landlords. That person put in their notice early in August. We were very fortunate to have somebody basically the day I posted the ad respond with a perfect kind of background. And so his name is Gideon. He started right after Labor Day, and he's fantastic. He has a background in affordable housing. He was over at Jefferson County Housing Authority doing something similar, but a little bit different. So we're really just getting him acclimated to Inglewood and Sheridan. He's jumped right in. He's got about 5 active families in the Sheridan School Grant that we're going to get housed here in the next few weeks. He's great. So we got lucky. I know that isn't always the case, right, when somebody leaves, but we're happy to have Gideon. We heard back from Medici Group that their application for Bonsai Flats is moving through the process. We did a letter of support for them. They hope to have an answer in November. And other than that, things are just kind of moving along. We're still not open to the public, but we take appointments and do everything kind of via email and Zoom and phone when we like.
Questions on the manager's report? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Okay.
Opposed? Motion is approved unanimously. Any unfinished business? New business, we have resolution number 4, Series 2021, HUD Annual Certification and Board Resolution. Give us some, thanks, we should. Sorry, get a motion. Overview.
I'll move to approve resolution number 4.
Second.
Motion made by Board Member Daigle and seconded by Board Member Hall.
So every year HUD asks us to do an annual plan. We, as Sheridan Housing Authority, can skip an actual plan because we are a high performer, which means we do really well in our voucher program. And the voucher program is small. We administer less than 550 units. So instead, HUD saves us the time and the paperwork. All we have to do is fill out the certification that says we are not violating any civil rights. That is all HUD asks for when we are qualified, when we are doing well, and we are small. So it's just a basic form. It just says, we're not doing anything to violate anyone's rights. And we try really hard not to, so we are doing this. We don't just certify that we do it, we do it.
Anybody have any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved unanimously. And resolution number 5 of Series 2021, approval of payment standards at 91% of fair market rents, effective January 1st, 2021.
Make a motion to approve resolution number 5.
A second. Motion made by Board Member Gallegos and second by Board Member Stang.
So every year we have to approve basically how much a voucher is worth in terms of how much rent we will pay a landlord. And every year we basically base it off the fair market rents. Currently, our payment standard sits at 92% of the fair market rents. And so next year, based on the current budget that we think we have, the budget authority that we have, and the number of vouchers, we are, I guess, lowering it to 91%, but the actual value is still higher than last year. So for example, right now, a current 1-bedroom payment standard is $1,200. And so next year that will go up by 41, and they all roughly go up about $40. And so we use this tool that HUD provides us that helps us estimate our spending for next year. We can't go much higher than this without risk of overspending. So we settled at 91 to, because we're anticipating that higher voucher count. And this does give people a little bit more money on their voucher. Fair market rents went up, obviously, which is why 91% is more than 92%.
Questions?
This is one where we may come back in the middle of next year if we end up with more money
Yeah.
and raise the payment standard. But for now, this is what we estimate going into 2022.
That's good. Very prudent.
Any other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved unanimously. And finally, we have resolution number 6 of series 2021, approval and authorization of the use of unrestricted funds for the city of Sheridan's Help for Homes Rehabilitation Program.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 6.
I'll second.
Motion made by board member Stang and seconded by board member Daigle.
So this is the program that we're talking about. It was asked to bring $50,000 for this resolution. I don't know if anybody feels differently about the amount based on the balance conversation. But this is really up for you guys to decide really how you want to spend it. And if you want to spend 50, if you want to change it, take the whole 80, I don't know. Interest rates are nothing now, so it's not like we're making a ton of money.
Yeah,
in what's sitting there.
generally we've kept it at around 50 because it seems to be, that's the volume of work it seems like we get to. And we've had, it usually comes pretty close, I think, to covering the year. doesn't it? Hmm?
Yeah, we usually use it in roughly a year, a little over a year, but that way we can kind of get it used up and we'll make sure it's
Yeah.
getting used. So 50,000 just seemed, I think one year we did ask for 100, but
That very first year, I think we did 40
Yes.
and 50. didn't
yes,
we?
and and it just took a while to use. So this feels like it kind of make sure we get it used up and then come back and ask, but
No, it's, again, it's kind of like when you budget for anything, right? You're kind of going, yeah, based on our history, this seems to be pretty close to what we spend on it each year.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you had no hope of there being any other revenue out there, maybe we'd want to spread it a little more or something. But if we
Yeah.
feel like there might be opportunities to
Oh,
add to it. or
I think we'll be able to keep
substitute,
it-
You know,
I think we'll be able to keep it going. The parameters might change a little and this or that, but we'll still be able to keep it going in some form or another. I'm positive of that. It might not look exactly like it looks now. And we'll try and figure that out, we got a little bit of time to do that. But again, this is just to set a budget number, really, so that we do this resolution for the auditors to keep track of things. It's true, right? Because we've never turned anybody down and said, we're out of money, right? It's just, it keeps on, the program just keeps rolling along. This is really just an exercise of keeping track of how much
we've
we are,
authorized.
we're designating each year for doing that purpose, yeah. Yeah, because if we were to blow through 50,000, let's say in January next year on this, which is not gonna happen. And then we had somebody come in February and said, I have this and we're not gonna go, I'm sorry, we're all done. No, we would just say, okay, well, we need to go back and we need to amend what we've done, and just like we do with anything else.
and we actually had that happen where
We have had that.
we had a lot come in, and so talked to Devin, and he said, pay it, because we know there's a housing authority meeting in a month or two, and we'll get it, and so we did do that, we did not reimburse them.
Mhm. And usually that kind of comes along, sometimes we do a little advertising push, the brothers will get out in the neighborhood and push the program so more people hear about it, so we have a little run, and then it'll quiet down, and then it'll have another run, and yeah.
I'm comfortable with that. Anybody else have any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is approved unanimously. And that's all we have on the agenda. So thank you very much for all your reports and work on this. And we'll adjourn the Housing Authority at 6:27 PM.
I also wanted to share, if anybody wants to know about something else that I'm not reporting on or wants to see something different, and since I'm new, this is
I
an
do have a
opportunity to
question.
change.
So when the housing, when the vouchers change amounts,
Mhm.
and so an individual who's receiving a voucher, does that affect their food stamps as well?
No,
It doesn't affect any, because I know like if your income goes up or whatever,
so it doesn't,
then your,
yeah, it doesn't have
food
anything to do with
stamps go down.
income. Basically, it just allows us to pay the landlord more money if we get a rent increase.
right?
Or sometimes folks are actually paying more for their unit than we pay, and then they have to kind of eat that difference. If we
Right,
raise the
right.
payments, they're gonna eat the difference. They don't, it's nothing to do with their income.
Oh,
It really
okay.
just has to do with how much we can pay for a voucher. Folks always pay, for the most part, 30% of their income, and we don't really let them pay more than 40. So no, not at all. It's actually good for most folks, because then they usually end up paying a little bit less. Because we'll eat the cost then of like a rent increase.
Right.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you guys. Good night.
Next, we have draft budget for open space, CTF, volunteer fire, Sheridan celebrates, stormwater, and SRA.
Okay, so.
Less than 5 minutes per, so keep going.
Well, these are, we can roll through these fairly quickly, not a problem. So these are what we generally, most of these, maybe not Sheridan celebrates, but the most of the other ones, and maybe not the fire pension fund, but there is what we call a special revenue fund. So there's generally a specific separate type of revenue that is collected either by the city or the state or shared out to us for a very specific type of expense. So it's an open space tax dollar. We have to spend it on open space
Stuff.
expenditure stuff, right? And whatever the language was that the voters passed. So there's a special revenue that goes into these buckets. And we'll just kind of go through them. Most of them are pretty simple. They're not really big ones. The open space fund, we do get that. That's where we get our share back funds. That's where the mayor and I went to their ceremony last week, and they share back part of the open space tax that the county levies and collects, and that's the one that we passed the resolution of support towards. So they're looking at continuing that tax, and we get a portion of that. So this going into next year, ours is a little over 185,000. It gets directly shared back to us. We put it in this open space fund. And if we go, excuse me, if you go to the next page or page after that, you'll see what we spend it on. So you can see that under the proposed budget, you said activities, open space, current revenues, most of it, vast majority of it comes from share back funds. You'll also see in this one, actually, this is where we park the GoCo Inspired grant monies that we received from the state. So this just happens to be where we park those monies, okay, and then pay for that program out of this fund as well. So it kind of comes into this fund and all goes out of this fund into that program. And we're the fiduciary agent on that for bringing those monies in and then making sure they get expended the way they should. And so that goes for, what are we on, 2 more years after next year, I believe it is. So 22 plus 2 more years was the 3. So we'll be seeing that for the next few years in there at least. But again, the ongoing revenue is the share back funds. That's
Did you
where we get
cash
that.
the giant check they gave us?
I'm looking for a giant ATM still, so I haven't found that. Yeah, they gave us one of those big giant checks. It's upstairs. It's cool. So you can see, but down below, when you get into the expenses, basically we expense out that entire GoCo Inspire grant. What we tend to do when we budget in this is that we might not know exactly, if we know a specific park project, we know for sure next year we're going to do a very specific park project, we'll park that amount in here. But we don't have, at this point, I don't have a specific park project that I know we're going to do for sure next year. So what we'll do is we'll park 20,000 in there for, say, an open space project, you know, just so we have some appropriated funds in there. And if we need to go use those, the council has already appropriated, we don't have to necessarily go through a budget amendment process to do that. Question, Dallas.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and that that money has to go to open space, right?
Yes. Now, they have recently with the share back, it has expanded a little bit what they'll let you use it for. It's not as narrow as it used to be. Like, for example, they used to not let you spend it on trails at all. And now they're letting you spend some on trails and things like that. You know, it used to have just be very, very clear definition of open space. And they thought, well, trails isn't open space, but they're changing the tune so that you get a little bit more
So
flexibility
can you
is
walk
bottom line.
through that?
But mostly it has to be open space related. So it's gonna be, it's gonna be open space, it's gonna be park type of stuff like that, where you can straight face say, yeah, it's open space stuff. Did you have a thought for it?
Yeah, I can see where it wouldn't fit in here
Hmm.
at all. But I know that Alex has been talking to Eddie Canosa
Mhm.
about doing some stuff, some activities for the kids Inspire up at. And the problem is it isn't free.
Yeah,
You can't get it for
I was hoping
free.
we could do that with the ARPA funds. if possible.
so you're like saying like recreation
How we,
programming.
yeah, how we could do, maybe
Yeah.
something like that, help,
Mhm.
not totally take it on. I don't want to do that, but maybe throw a few dollars at it.
Mhm.
To help cover that.
Yeah, ARPA would
Dog-
be,
Folks that
our,
carry
our
go
funds,
with
That's
That
kids'
could
mental
be-
health, getting kids back together and, sorry, we're talking over each other, I apologize.
sorry, Andrew.
That's my fault. But yeah, I think, mental health for kids is a big part of that. So I think, I think it's easy to make the case that bringing kids back together and getting them active,
Mhm.
is part of our mission,
Mhm.
if recovering from COVID.
Mhm. So yeah,
It's kind of out of.
the short answer is most likely that would not fit in here.
How did we get Inspire then in here? Refresh my memory on that.
I think that's just kind of more or less where so the share back funds, when they come in, those have strings attached to them. All right, okay, because the voters of Arapahoe County said, you gotta do that. But the grant monies come in, they're just like, you just need to track it for us. So we're just tracking it in this.
In
Yeah.
that slot. Thank you. Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Is that right? A good explanation, Teresa?
It is,
Okay.
and if you will notice, the expenses for the Inspire grant are always a little bit more than the revenue. But because of how the Inspire grant works, we can use those share back revenues for
A
the
few, some
difference to make
batches.
it up.
Yeah.
So that's the other reason we put it in here, is because on this one, we are able to use the share back funds for the difference. So that's why it got parked in the open space.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, we kick in a little ourselves always towards
Yes.
that program. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So that's the open space fund. You can see that we're building towards a healthy fund balance, but that's good. We've in the past expended quite a bit out of this, especially with, for example, you can see up above Chase Park. We use this. We've also used this in the South Platte working group projects and expensed a lot of those projects out of this as well. So it's always kind of been one of those funds where we build it up and build it up and build it. So it's kind of like escrowing for the big park project that's going to come along, or the big grant match that you have to have out there for doing something. So we kind of build it up, and then look at, okay, we got one or two big projects. Now we can tap that to use those funds towards. And then and at the same time, expense a few small, we'll do a $10,000 project, a $20,000 project, something like that out at the same time. But build that fund balance up to where we can really leverage it towards something good. Because when you start talking about, park projects or larger things like that, we're talking millions of dollars, right? And so you gotta if you're gonna bring in millions, you gotta have maybe 1 million to leverage to get you a couple or 3 million out of there.
Speaking of that, down there at the Federal and Hampton, the property there that
Mhm.
urban renewal or urban drainage is going to donate. Would that get thrown in
Potentially.
this? Okay.
Yeah, potentially we could look at using, and sometimes what we'll do Dallas is like, when we know we have a project, sometimes we even split them. We'll do like some out of here and some out of CTF possibly, but we really look at each project specifically and go, okay, where is it most appropriate? Or where do we have the bigger balance? Or, it's kind of a chess game of figuring out, okay, we want to spend these dollars towards this project because we know we can't put this other park project in there because it won't qualify under the CTA, right?
Meet the
So
most stringent requirements first, right?
yes. So it can be a bit of a moving it around, or, okay, we're gonna do half and half, or we're gonna do something like that. But yeah, potentially this could end up in there. I think that we're probably still maybe looking at the 2023 budget for significant city expenditures towards that project, because I think most of the work going into next year is gonna be urban drainage, acquiring the property, cleaning the property up, and then handing it back to us. In the meantime, we're already working with South Suburban Parks, and we're working with the county on doing some planning and looking at, okay, what's possible that we can do that once we have the property turned over to us. Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Yeah, so building a positive fund balance, always good in here, and looking towards, for example, that could be a fairly large number, or a big number project, depending on what we want to end up doing there. And then that we might potentially, tag this, bring in some county money, apply for a South Suburban or an open space grant, something along those lines, like a share back grant. And yeah, so it's always good to just build those up so you have those options available.
Okay.
So that's how we do open space. The next one on Teresa's memo is CTF, Conservation Trust Fund. This is the lottery money. All right, so we get a certain distribution from the state lottery that comes to us, and is it based on population? I think it is, isn't it? Yeah, thank you. So based on our population, we get some in. That we, if you go to the next page on, oops, come on, computer. All right. If you go into the Conservation Trust budget there, you'll see that we do a lot of maintenance work with CTF money. Again, this is another one that they used to not let you do maintenance work, and they changed that more like 10 years ago, or maybe not quite 10 years ago. But they all the cities in the area were saying, you're giving us all this CTF money, but you know what our big need is we have all these unmet maintenance needs, and we can't use these dollars, these GoCo dollars, to maintain what we just bought with all the GoCo dollars. Right. So they finally said, yeah, okay, you're right. And so they let us use that more towards maintenance now. And that's what you'll see. So we park a maintenance, pretty standard, $4,000 for each of our parks in there. Bobcat, Wildcat, Veterans, we'll park there for $4,000 maintenance. Some years we're real close to that. Maybe we're a little bit more, a little bit less, but again, it seems like a pretty decent budget number. We're generally in that $4,000 range for that. And then every once in a while, we will also, as I talked about with the open space fund, we'll fund some larger projects at a CTF if it makes sense to do so as well. That's why we will park, you'll see a miscellaneous park project for $10,000. So we'll appropriate the funds there if we need to do that. And in this one, we do have a specific project that we're looking at next year under parks lighting. And we budgeted $80,000 for that. That was, originally a discussion that we had, this past spring with Officer Jen Chase with our police department. And she came and talked to Randy and I about Sheridan Square Park. And, some of her discussions that she had down there with some of the residents, and saying, I think a little bit of park lighting or a little bit of lighting down there would go a long way. And I think we've seen, some of that is proven out, because we've had some vandalism issues down there, and maybe some park lighting. And then, and during that discussion, excuse me, Randy and I were talking, like, if we're gonna do some lighting there, we might as well throw the other parks in there too, because it's not the only one that needs some light, right? Sure. We've got other parks up there, especially up on the hill, that need some work and need some lighting. So we're gonna park 80,000 there to look at improving the lighting of most all of our parks. and seeing what that looks like. So you can thank Officer Chase for bringing that to our attention and pushing that along. And it was great for her to do that. And we'll bring more specifics as to what that looks like for each park here early next year. We'll do a plan for those. Okay.
As long as it's bat friendly,
Bat friendly, like,
lumen friendly.
does that mean like it's like bat signal?
Right.
Oh.
No, the other way.
No, other way?
Doesn't interfere
Okay.
with the bats.
Beam down.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
And like hardcover protected from like the baseballs and
right.
basketballs and everything that's flying.
And we don't want
Yeah.
Jack coming up in here and telling us about lumens and what have you.
No, we don't, because Jack would give us an earful on that. He
He's very
absolutely
smart.
would, yes, and rightfully
I have
so.
loads of emails if you guys need a refresher course.
I'm absolutely sure you do.
Because it actually, you know, and good lighting has been proven for recognition of individuals that, you know, when the police are looking for someone, a certain lighting, you know, if it's good lighting, then they can see them better. And if it's not good lighting, they can't see anything.
Mhm. Well,
And
and
I
we'll,
have
and so
loads
does-
of information.
exactly, and since it was brought forward by Officer Chase, we'll make sure that we're coordinating with the police department on this, you know, and talking with them on what they see as their needs. And we'll also be tying in close with like South Suburban. They have a lot of very good standards and a lot of good designs, you know, that they currently use. So we can lean on them to help us with this as well to, you know, get us some really nice, lighting projects for the park.
Cool.
Yeah, make it work for those neighborhoods and make it work for each individual park. All right. So
Right,
what
right.
works for Sheridan Square might not
Might not
work for
work on the
Bobcat,
hill.
might not work for, but you know, so we'll make sure we
'Cause they're
we
on
make
the
it
hill.
work for everybody.
Cool.
Okay.
So I have a question. Is CTF and GoCo all, you said it's all lottery money, but
Mhm.
then they separate it out into those two funds, or that was something the city did? Like a GoCo portion and a CTF portion?
So no, GoCo, so the monies, the monies that are distributed to the municipalities and everything, the GoCo monies come through what's called the Conservation Trust Fund. So that's set up at the state, where basically they share the monies out to us, and it has all the rules that go along with it. And we just call it the same thing here, right? So if we say CTF, it's the same thing as saying GoCo money and anything along those
And the
lines.
other one was a special grant that was awarded.
The one-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fire grant, yeah.
Yes, yes. Mhm. Yeah, so really, when you hear CTF, it's GoCo. It's the lottery money, and that's how it comes in. And again, we have to follow all the rules that go along. And again, it's a special revenue. Yeah. Mhm. Okay, how are we doing? Moving along? I gotta go a little faster.
Yeah.
Sorry, I like these funds. That's why I like, those are the fun ones. But you're right. Okay. Next, stormwater. Okay, stormwater, we know the revenue comes from the annual bills that we sent out. We have been each year incrementally increasing it just a little bit on a nominal amount, just to try and get that to be up, because this has been one of the funds in the city where our expenses are doing this and I should say our revenues are doing this and our expenses are doing this, right? So it is not in a sustainable mode as of yet. We need to get it to where it will be a sustainable mode. To do that, we've taken some preliminary steps towards doing that. We've done and looked at a rate study that we need to do. We were getting ready to kind of finish up and pull the trigger on a rate study and COVID hit. So it's not a good idea to raise your water or your any of your utility rates. You don't raise them in the middle of a pandemic when people are losing their jobs and that. The other thing I learned the hard way is that you don't do it during an election year also. So we have, as of last year and this year, we've done just very small, like 10% increase with each aspect of the budget, knowing full well it needs much more than that. And it's going to be painful at some point. We're going to have to do it. We're going to have to get those rates where they can make it sustainable. But I think next year, maybe we can finally get that done. We're going to have to, because again, it's not in a sustainable place right now. So Don,
I've got a question for you,
Mhm.
because we're thinking storm sewers, whatever. Would this be something like with what's happened to Inglewood? And it's cost us a police car, and so it's about educating the people of, we've got to get this fund up here so that we're not in the same boat that Inglewood is right now. I forget what the number is, Randy, 50 some $million, if not more.
It's a lot. It's huge.
And it's citywide, and they just kept putting it off and putting it off.
Yes.
So by educating our citizens, saying this is why we have to incrementally do this,
It's a good
this
point.
is what it's going to, otherwise there's going to come a time when we've got to do something and we don't have the money.
Mhm.
Good point.
Englewood's been collecting it.
Huh?
Englewood has been collecting it. They throw it in with their water bill.
Yeah.
They slide it in with the water bill and people don't know that.
Mhm.
Okay, but
I know what
I
you're
understand
talking
what you're saying,
about.
but it being in a separate fund,
Yes.
which I like, is we know where it's going, and that's another way of educating the people, say, we have it in a separate fund. What money comes in goes into here.
Yeah.
So we know that we have the right amount of money to be able to hopefully take care of these things.
Sure.
And one of the things is we also grants that's having that money. When I first got on council many years ago, a lot of times we didn't have money to get grants.
Mhm.
I mean, there'd be a grant and we didn't have the money. What are we gonna do? And somewhere along the line, we got smart and said, well, we gotta start putting money away. So when these grants come, we've got enough to match it.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Well, one of the things we're fortunate though is with the driving change program, we made all these improvements to that utility.
Right.
So we've got a very good, the physical shape of our stormwater utility is excellent. It's top notch. Inglewood did not have that. They had years and years of deferred maintenance that has put them in a big, huge hole. And they're having to do a very painful exercise now to get them where they need to be. But basically, our fund is doing the same thing. You know, it's not sustainable. And when you run a utility, that's one of the things. When you run a utility, a water utility, a storm utility, a sewer utility, your fees, so the user fees that people pay, your water bill, your sewer bill, your storm utility bill, those fees should cover the expense of providing that utility. That's the model. It should cover it. Ours right now, we're not. Our fees do not cover providing the capital and the capital maintenance for that utility. Right now, it's in wonderful shape, but we got to make sure we get this fund in a spot so we can maintain that. What that'll take is we will have to raise rates. There's absolutely no other way around to do it. There's no other way to do this.
Right.
But there's ways to do it. We've done a model. We've got a new model we can look at. We can do it over time. We can phase it in. We'll do that. It's just the last couple of years have been not the time to start to do that. Yeah. So, but it is something that is, of all the places in my budget where we sit there and I lose sleep, this is it, right? Because this is the one where it's just like, oh God, we've got to get that in shape, and we will. So
hopefully,
Yeah.
next year, this is a strange thing to hope for, we'll be able
Yes.
to increase our bills.
Yes, we'll be able to do it.
Fingers
But to Don's point,
Right.
it's gonna take an education effort, okay?
Mhm.
So when I've done raised water rates and other utility rates in other places, what you will thank yourself 100 times over by spending a good 6 to 8 months explaining beforehand why you're gonna do it.
Yeah.
And just get some articles out there and get some social media out there and say, look, we have to do it. It's coming. Make sure you're aware of this. We're gonna phase it in, so it's not all at once, because that would be horrible. Nobody,
Right.
it's gonna get, that's some of the things that this council have to decide. Do we phase it in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? There's different models we can look at to see what that looks like. But you guys will be having to make those decisions, and probably next year. Otherwise, we're already in a bad spot with this fund. We can kind of get by, but we're just doing that barely. Yeah, and if you show this to auditors and you show this to the state, this is a big red flag.
Right.
To people that like that. Yeah, okay, so that's stormwater. The other couple things we do in there, we pay for our street sweeper out of here. Excuse me. What else do we do that's significant?
EMS4 program.
Thank you. So a lot of that stormwater, the emission program that we have, so anything that we put into the river, we have to make sure that we're covering that. We do those testing expenses and stuff out of this one as well.
We are under two TMDLs, total daily maximum load assessments. both for Bear Creek and for the South Platte River, which are taking additional testing, which will be going away from Groundwork Denver. So we will end up having to go back to our own testing again next year.
So this is not gonna start, the expense on this is not gonna go away or go down. It's just gonna keep going up. And we got some work to do to get there. Okay, moving along quickly. Debt service fund, really, the debt service fund is kind of, I always say, it is what it is. So we've incurred this debt. This is the, most of the revenue come to pay off. This comes from the city's mill levy. And let's see, I know I saw it in there. We're at 12.445 mils, which is excellent. If you remember when we issued a lot of the bonds for the street projects, we told the public we would do everything we could to keep it under 20 mils. We have been able to keep it under 20 mils, and it continues to drop a little bit. That also helps because our assessed value goes up, so that's good. So that, you know, that all helps our debt service. But really, this is just kind of where we track all of that in this fund. It is what it is. We have to pay our debt service. We have to pay that. What we get in from the mill levy is what the county assessors tell us, right? So they tell us here's the money coming out. We have the money going back the other way to service the debt, and it is what it is. Really, the only kind of things that'll change too much is that as we pay down principal, we'll pay less interest. So some of those payments change, but it's all still right. It's just kind of going up and down in one spot and down in that, right? Up in one spot, down in another. Things like that. That's debt service. It is what it is. Anything that specific that council needs to know about debt service that we're running up on, Teresa, like anything? We don't have any big milestones coming up that I can think of right now, not at least not next year. So, okay. Going to the next one. So we got volunteer fire pension. Volunteer fire pension has been pretty steady. We, over the past 10 years have increased that steadily. And then about 2 years ago, we kind of leveled it off. I think it was about 2 years ago, leveled it off at 50, supporting that fund at $50,000 a year from the city. That's basically about twice of what we're almost actually required to do, because the state match is 24,000, 23,000-ish, somewhere around in there. So the city is doing more than almost twice as much more as what we would be required to do in supporting that pension fund. That's fine. I think that we've done it to catch up for and repay that fund for kind of underfunding it for a while there. So that kind of came up. But at some point, it was just a couple of years ago, I came to council and said, this is it. It doesn't, we were like bumping at 5,000 a year or so. And I was like, no, we can't continue to do that. So we kind of drew the line where it is now at 50,000. That's council's call. If you want to maintain it at that. My recommendation is that it not be more. Again, we're basically double where we are on that. And I think we're doing more than right by that fund right now. It's a small fund. It's not a big fund. It will eventually kind of peter out, as we all tend to peter out, right?
Volunteers.
But it's not a huge expense for us, and it's something I think that we're happy to do for those folks that serve the city. But again, I think it's in a good spot right now, and I wouldn't recommend it raising it at this point.
Okay. Good to know.
And then Sheridan celebrates. Excuse me. I don't have that in front of me. I've been doing really well. I hadn't been coughing at all. It's right there, isn't it? Oh, one moment. Where's Sheridan celebrates? That's right there. Okay. So here's the thing with Sheridan celebrates for next year. No change to the budget at all. It's very simple, straightforward. It is the budget. We're recommending the budget that we had this year for next year as well. Jean will come at our first meeting in November and do the summary of this year's event and to take a look at that. So if through that discussion you think that this would warrant some changes or anything, there's still time, right? We'd be able to do that. But again, I think this is based on what our discussions with Jean have been, and she recommends going forward, the same amount, doesn't look at any increases or reductions at this time. So that's all of them. I'm sorry, I kind of bogged down at the beginning and then went really fast at the end.
We cover SRA and the- are we gonna-
Oh, SRA. Teresa, could you do SRA so I don't?
Sure.
Just touch on that real quick.
Sure.
Thank
2
you.
minutes.
It's all good.
Thank
No.
you so much.
So as far as looking at the SRA, so you have 3 primary sources of revenue. You have your public improvement fee, you have your sales tax increment, and you have your property tax increment. So as far as the general fund revenue, that's the 50% of the public improvement fee. The other 50% goes to the debt service. So when you look at that, we really try to keep things really in line with what we've been doing. A majority of what's on the general fund in the SRA is reimbursing the city for all of their services, which you see that every month in the payables, reimbursing the city. So that's primarily what we have. We're just kind of budgeting 3% for like the salaries and benefits and those things. And then we just did kind of a small increase based off of our 2021 adopted. I had went pretty conservative on the revenues. They are coming back stronger, but since 2020 was such a wild year. So I've got that budgeted at $1,479,000, and that will more than cover the costs of the general fund. As you can see, if you kind of follow that proposed budget page down, you'll see that our ending fund balance, we have, I'm projecting to have our ending fund balance of 874,170. So it's a very healthy balance. So, which is nice. That was one of the things that helped us when we had COVID and we didn't know how we were going to pay. We knew we had some good healthy fund balances. So I'm going to kind of quickly progress on to debt service. So debt service, talking about those 3 revenues, that property tax increment. So Devin did not get up and do a happy dance, but the AV increased significantly, the assessed value, and it was,
It helps us
I
out.
just was
very
doing
much.
happy dance, and so, didn't do one, but
Because you
anyway.
guys don't own something here.
What did it go up like 12%?
Oh, I don't know percent, it was 21 million. But
Yeah.
But
That's pretty good.
it's been pretty steady here, so it's like, and I'm watching other places that it's like going up and so yes, I'm sorry. So anyway, so our property tax increment revenue for 2022 is increased slightly, so we've got that about 3.3 million. Sales tax increment, again, the same thing. I've really been pretty conservative in my budget in 2021. Things are coming back stronger than ever, so I really feel that putting in the 6,375,000 will be not a problem, because I think we're gonna actually be there this year. So, and then going on down the public improvement fees, like I said, that's 50-50 between the general fund and the debt service fund. Shooting on down under expenditures, the bond principal and interest for the A's, that's set. We have to pay that. So that's kind of the same. I mean, we have a variable rate interest, so the interest might change a little, but that's what we're going to have to pay. When we get down to the bond principal and interest for the B series, basically what that is at the end of the year, we do a calculation and we set aside money for the next year, and whatever's left gets paid to the B bonds, because those are the subordinate bonds. We actually don't have to, if there was no money at the end of the year, like if COVID happened again, then we're okay, because we have enough monies to pay the A bonds, and that's what we are required to pay. So all that money just goes to the B bond series. And again, if we end up with more revenue, it goes to there. If we end up with less revenue, B bonds don't get as much. And again, that is the developer that holds the B bonds, that is holding those bonds. Moving on down, all the rest of the expenses, those are expenses that are set up in the bond documents that we have to pay. So our rating service fees, our letter of credit that we just renewed, all of that is set what we have to pay in those bond documents. The one thing that is you'll see that there's a city public improvement fee allocation. That is something that goes back to the city when we talked about the capital budget. That goes to the city, and then 50% of that goes to capital. So that's kind of flowing from one to the other to the other. That's where it's coming from. So, and again, that just depends on how much public improvement CDBG money comes in for the year. Then going on down, the ending fund balance for that is 10,643,228. We are required to keep a debt service reserve of the $7,407,500. So we are meeting that, and the rest is, that's just available to pay for debt service again. Tornado hits River Point, I don't know. So crazy things.
At some point in
So
the
we're
future,
set.
it'll be, yeah.
Yeah, we are really set very well.
No, yeah, it just goes to show, you know, that the SRA is in excellent financial shape. The River Point Center is doing very, very well. Right, even the developer is getting the, you know, basically gravy payments with the B bonds, which is great for them, you know, so it's, everything's going very well.
Yes.
Mhm.
So I cruised to that really quick. Did you have?
Sorry, because I spent all day on open space and CTF. It's my favorite two funds.
Yeah.
Do you have questions? And this won't be presented, that you'll put it for approval in October. So
Yeah.
you have a month, so if you think of questions, you can tell it Devin, tell it me. tell it
Absolutely.
someone.
Yeah, if you're looking at something in there and go, wait, what did that?
Yeah,
We won't be approving these until another month.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess we'll adjourn and we can do your manager's report later. or-
Yes,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
Okay, 7:03 PM. We'll adjourn. It helped though, didn't it?
It helped when I first got here, yeah.